This program is brought to you by thepodcastfactory.com.
Ben Settle, compulsively punchable.
He's the kind of guy who you'd probably just punch on the arm really hard if you ever met him.
Worshipped by feminists.
He pokes fun at feminism and women, just joking around, his whole sandwich making thing.
Mildly inspiring.
Yes, I recommend the Ben Settle Show, and anybody who isn't on it, that's their own loss.
Somewhat authentic.
Ben is a very distinct personality. There's no fluff. I can't stand fluff.
Syrupy sweet.
Tells it like it is, and sometimes may not be the most polite manner, shall we say.
Kind of useful.
So I have spent tens of thousands of dollars on coaching and masterminds, and I've learned more from Ben Settle's podcast than from any of that.
Semi-intelligent.
Ben sounds like a crazy guy at times, but he's one of the smartest individuals in marketing I've ever met.
Mostly forgettable.
He's always in the forefront of my mind.
The BenSettle.com podcast begins now.
This is Ben Settle, the BenSettle.com podcast. So, Jonathan, I know I don't talk about Wing Chun very much on this show. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it anyway again.
It's about time.
This may not be a very long episode, or it might be. I don't know. Depends on how many side trips I take or tangents I go on. But this idea of startled force is a very interesting concept. It's not necessarily a Wing Chun thing. I mean, I think it's just common sense, actually. But there is this movie. It's called Warriors 2 with the number 2. And it's about Wing Chun. And it's not really that great of a movie. I'll be the first to admit it. But there is a really good scene in it. There's one good scene in it that I think that all Wing Chun people just love because it's a really cool training scene where this guy is coming to the master to learn Wing Chun. And, he's getting his butt kicked and all this as he's learning the system. Well, the master has this guy, this student fighting one of his other students, like sparring with him, who's much bigger, stronger, and better than this new student. And he's talking, what the master does is when they're fighting, he comes up behind his new student with a very sharp pin, like a needle you use for threading something. And he sticks it in the guy, goes up behind him, sticks it in his side, right? Without him knowing. And suddenly the guy hits the opponent 5 times harder than he normally would because he was startled. And they call that startled force, which is interesting because I'm not even sure that's a Wing Chun thing. I certainly have not been taught this, but in the movie, it made a lot of sense. He's like, this is how, think of how much you just hit, how harder you just hit. And you could put yourself in this position too, probably. Like if you, let's say you were fighting someone, Jonathan, producer Jonathan. Let's say you were fighting, on my behalf. You were fighting Doberman Dan.
Oh boy.
Because he got mad at me. Because a few weeks ago, I told everyone to send him an email. And he wants to throw down with me. But, I live in the opposite side of the country as you two. So I send you as my emissary.
By proxy.
And Doberman Dan is, he's a pretty strong guy.
Yeah.
He looks like a strong guy. He's as short as you and actually shorter than us. I don't know if you
I was
know
surprised.
Not,
yeah, I was surprised that he is shorter. He is stockier, though, too.
Oh, yeah. He probably bench presses both. I mean, that's why I'm sending you to do my dirty work. And let's say that you go there to fight him and you don't know I'm there. I'm like hiding in the weeds, right? I'm like, I don't let my presence be known. And he's beating you up. And I come up behind you and stick a needle right in your back. Your side, nice. And suddenly you get started and you hit him. It's like you would hit him so hard you go flying across Orlando into a bush of alligators. Okay, so and that's startled force. Like it is a real thing. I mean, it is a real thing. When you get startled, you kind of do things like that. You will have a stronger force of movement in whatever you're doing. That's why people, if they get startled, they're and they're trying to hold something delicate, they might break it on accident. It's just what happens. So let's apply this to business because this is really what people are not listening to this to hear my Wing Chun bullcrap. They're not listening for that. That's another podcast. That's somebody else's podcast. This one's about business and marketing and the inner game and all that kind of fun stuff. So there's an email player subscriber who I will not name. I never name these people, Jonathan, because I think unless I was going to get their permission first and I didn't have time to, I don't think this person would mind if I named her name, but just to be safe, I'm not going to name her name. But okay. She was telling me, and I guess this wasn't too long ago, maybe a year ago or something, she had gotten into kind of a toxic, since we like to use that word on this show now, joint venture. Now, it wasn't a toxic whiteness joint venture. I don't think there was a white person in this joint venture, unfortunately. So we can blame it on toxic whiteness. This was just toxic bitchiness, I think. I think this was just toxic bitches because the way I understand it, she got into this joint venture and she owed like something. I don't remember the specifics of it, but she ended up owing this joint venture partner a lot of money. And even though that somehow she got screwed out of being paid by the customers, so she couldn't pay this joint venture, something like that, some weird thing where a normal person would say, don't worry about paying me right away, get your house in order. But this person was like, no, you need to pay me like as per our agreement in 48 hours. And she didn't even have the money. She was literally negative $3,500 in the hole. And she had no rent money, no nothing. Okay, and she had rent coming up due, and she had no money for anything. She was literally negative in PayPal, negative $3,600 or something like that. And so, needless to say, I've not been in that exact situation personally. Like I've never been that bad off. I've had my scares, but never like that. That to me is freaky. And so and I said, so what'd you do? And she goes, and then she told me, she goes, I'm not even sure what I did. I just blank slated, and suddenly she was on the phone. Suddenly she was making deals. She's calling up everyone she's ever known in her life and business. And sure enough, within a 24 hours, she had made the money back. She doesn't even know how she did. To this day, you could ask her and she probably couldn't even tell you how she did it. She just went into a trance almost. And because of that startled force, that's what it did to her. She got into that startled state where you just blank slate and do what needs to be done. And it's not, I'm not saying people should try to get into that, situation or anything. But if you are in that situation, or if you're ever scared of being in that situation, there's a small window of time where fear and anxiety and all this stuff, shame, all these things are going to hit you at once. And, it sucks. But, and I've been in situations, not quite as bad as hers, but I have been in situations pretty bad that caused startled force to happen. And you got to run with it. It's like when you're talking about gamesmanship, when people do stupid stuff, it makes you angry. It gives you that little jing of power. That's what this will do to you. Now, again, I'm not saying this is an ideal state to be in. I'm not saying you should try to get in this state. I'm not saying it's always everything's gonna be fine. I don't know if everything's gonna be fine, Jonathan. I don't want to lie to them. I'm not gonna tell my listeners that everything's gonna be okay when it might not. But I am gonna say this: if you use that startled force, you will hit your problems and your adversities a lot harder than you will if you don't use it. And, it just lets you get more done. It lets you get a lot more done than you would usually get done. I've seen this happen with other people too. When they get in these situations and they don't let the fear consume them. They use it, they direct it. And, not because they're wise in martial arts masters or anything, but just because they know they have to pay rent and stuff. It's amazing what people will do and what you're capable of doing. And you might find that you actually come out of the whole thing better off in the end. But that power, when you turn into the Hulk, you got to start tearing buildings down, do whatever you got to do. And then you can turn back into Bruce Banner and when you're done. So that's the secret of startled force, Jonathan. I told you this would probably be a very short one, but I think it's an important lesson that, we all get caught. Everybody gets caught in situations. It's going to happen. I don't care how successful you are. I don't care how long you've been doing it. Some crap will always come up. And if you try to think about this episode, if that happens, and use that startled force. I'm not guaranteeing you anything. It may not, you may end up missing the target. You may have the startled force, like Jonathan, when he goes and fights Dan, he may have the startled force and Dan may duck and he may hit a tree with his fist and break his hand.
Ouch.
I don't know. I can't tell you what's going to happen, but I can say you're much better off trying to use the startled force than not using it. So that's it for this week, Jonathan, unless you have something to add, do you?
Yeah. The one thing that I can't remember if it must have been the old Ben Settle show where you talked about it and where it made me realize something really important. There was a time where I was going through just trying different things and I spent a lot of time meditating and getting calm and mellow and focused and all that stuff. And then on a call with you, you reminded me how anger was actually an important part of success, because when those people who try to do the gamesmanship to you talk shit to you, when those people in your family are saying, oh, that's cute, all that stuff gets you angry, you need to use that to get out of your situation. And so I wanted to just bring that back again, because you made me realize that it was okay to be angry and embrace my anger. So now I'm just pissed off most of the time.
Well, now let me ask you something. When you embraced it, did Cupcake shake her fist at the ceiling, yelling my name like Ben? Why?
What happened?
Why did you?
No, you know what? Because I play all these games at home just trying to improve myself any way I can. And one of them is not talking negatively and not talking about, I hate this, I hate that. But what she noticed was that I brought back hate. I hate when those stupid fuckers cut me off in traffic. I hate these stupid internet marketers. I brought all that back and I feel more like me nowadays.
Well, you know, that hate, and especially on the road, it's very important to road rage. I mean, that's where it's going to help you the most. So I'm just kidding. Anyone listen, I'm totally kidding. But, you know, you're right. I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like that you might as well use it. It's there. The nervous system is there for a reason. You know, it gives you, that's what it's there for. Anger is not something to, you know, don't let it consume you. But it's there for a reason. You might as well use it.
Use it.
And so be it.
Yeah, it's fuel. That's the way I look at it now. Whatever fuel I get, whether it's good vibes or bad vibes, when I have it, I need to use it.
Rocket fuel, as we would say in Bandon. We have all these rockets. So next week, I'm going to get back into talking about writing and specifically how to write fast.
Sonnets?
Because, you know, and not poetry, but like any kind of writing, not just poetry. So any kind of writing. So we'll talk about that next week, Jonathan. Until then, may the anger be with you.
Toodaloo.
Always.
All right, that's a wrap for another bensettle.com podcast. Thank you for tuning in. We'll be back next time.
You've been listening to the bensettled.com podcast. To get your hands on a free issue of Ben Settle's prestigious $97 per month email player's newsletter, simply go to www.bensettle.com.
This is the podcastfactory.com.